Hi everyone. So in the second half of this video, I'm going to show you how to use some standard job search sites, Indeed and Monster, but there's a bunch of other ones out there. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the job market itself, because a lot of times it seems to me that universities, professors, instructors in different classes don't necessarily give students a good sense of what the job market is like right now. The short version is that the job market sucks right now. So my experience primarily is with the academic job market, which is not what many of you will be experiencing, which is good news for you, because my sense is that the job market outside of academia is actually better than the academic job market. But there's a couple of things that you want to be aware of. The first is that there is massive competition for full-time jobs with good salaries, with benefits. There's a couple of reasons for that. But I want to first scare you a little bit by giving you a sense from the academic world of what massive competition may look like. I applied recently for a lecturer position at Harvard. When they rejected me, they said they had over 400 applications for this job. I also applied for a fellowship, a postdoctoral fellowship at UCLA. When they rejected me, they said they had over 900 applications. So again, my sense is there's more competition outside, in academia than there is outside the academic job market. So those of you going for corporate jobs, those of you going for non-governmental organization jobs, those of you going for nonprofits, any of these kinds of things, you're likely not to face as much competition as that, but you're still going to face a lot of competition. And there's a couple of major reasons for this. One of the ones that people often talk about is that increasing numbers of people are getting university educations, which is often, or which for decades and decades after World War II was considered the sort of prerequisite to a white-collar middle-class job. So there is one version of this theory that says we've overproduced college-educated people. And this is actually one of the issues in academia, is that we've overproduced people with PhDs and things like this. But I actually think there's a more important reason that you want to be aware of, and it has to do with sort of larger political economic trends. Because we've entered into what some political economists call a post-Fordist economy. So what does that mean? Well, part of this is related to what we all know as the gig economy. Basically, the idea of the post-Fordist economy is that we've moved on from the Fordist era, where you could support a family, a regular sort of 4 or 5 person family, whatever it is, on a 40-hour work week where you were working 9 to 5, and you had a full-time contract, regular salary, benefits, all this, etc., etc. The idea of the post-Fordist economy is basically that everything has become flexible. So work hours have become much more flexible. The standard 9 to 5 is much less common now, partially because of digital communications, partially because we're much more oriented to the service industry now, and that requires less regular hours. Contracts have become more flexible, which largely benefits employers because it tends to mean that they can employ more part-time people, they can employ more contract labor, they can employ more people for short-term work rather than hiring people full-time long-term. The other big component with the post-Fordist economy is that it's increasingly run on contract labor, which specifically means that businesses are hiring contractors, or they're classifying workers as contractors, which is a way of getting the labor from people without necessarily paying them benefits or having to comply with labor safety regulations, labor pay regulations, and things like this. So if you look at the unemployment numbers, officially we have very low unemployment. Part of the problem with just looking at the unemployment numbers is that, as I understand it, the way unemployment is calculated is that anybody who's looking for work and is working at least is working more than 1 hour per week is counted as employed. So if you drive for Uber 2 hours a week or something like that, or you deliver pizzas with 1 5-hour shift, you're counted as employed even if you're looking for full-time work and unable to find it. So we actually have a much higher rate of what's called involuntary part-time employment than economists say we should. There's a caveat on this, sort of in terms of what's immediately been going on in the past couple of weeks with the stock market, and I will talk about that in just a second. But based on the fact that we had had pretty continuous economic growth since about 2012 or so, 2010 maybe, rates of involuntary part-time employment were much, much lower than economists thought they should be based on the health of the economy. So what that means is that there were substantially more people looking for full-time work who weren't able to find it than officially there should have been. So that's something that you do want to be aware of as you go into the job search, is that the trick is not necessarily finding work. The trick is finding full-time work that's going to give you good pay and benefits. So the other big concern with that is actually, if you've been following the stock market news for the past couple of weeks, it's a bad business, folks. The stock market has declined massively. And while the stock market is not necessarily the best indicator of economic health, it does have major repercussions. So I got my bachelor's in 2009, which was about the worst time in modern history to be finishing a degree. We had the crash of 2008 into the Great Recession, and so all of a sudden jobs were gone. Like, there was just, people weren't hiring the way that they had been in 2007. So that was a massive, massive issue for the people that I graduated with, who, unlike me, didn't go on to graduate school. So for those of you who are graduating this year or in the next couple of years, I'm really quite concerned that you may find yourselves in a similar position, because the stock market has declined so precipitously. And as a nation, the US did not do a particularly good job rebuilding our infrastructure to protect against economic collapse after 2008. We set things up to protect financial people, which we always do because we are very good at that, but we did not necessarily do a good job to protect employees, or to ensure that there was enough sort of framework, enough of a social safety net to really help people out in the event of another recession. And there have been concerns about a recession for the past year and a half, maybe 2 years or so. And I think with what's going on with the stock market right now, with what's going on with the disruption of international supply lines due to COVID-19, and so on and so on, I think we're very much we're very potentially on the road to that. And so that's something that you want to be really aware of as you start planning for your future. And I recognize that all of this is really depressing, and this is all sort of bad news. And it is and it isn't. The bad news, of course, is all of that stuff that I've just said. The competition over jobs, the difficulty of finding full-time positions, the potential for a recession, if not a depression. The good news is there still are jobs out there. There still are people hiring. We need people to continue working. And so there are jobs out there, and there are things that you can do to put yourself in a better position to get those jobs. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But for the rest of this video, I'm going to sort of switch gears, and we're going to talk about finding job ads, or finding job calls as such. So we'll take a look at Indeed, and we'll take a look at Monster, and I'll give you some suggestions about how to find jobs that you would be a good fit for.
Alright, so moving on from the rather depressing first portion of this video, at this stage I want to shift gears a little bit and talk you through some of the job search techniques that you may want to use as you're attempting to find employment. What I'm going to show you is going to be fairly basic stuff. It's going to hopefully get you a fairly wide range of results, which, especially when you're looking for a first job or an entry-level position or something like that, I think is a really good approach. So I'm going to take you through a couple of the biggest job search websites. We've got Indeed right here, and then next we'll be looking at Monster. So probably the first thing that you want to be thinking about is what type of job you want, or what type of job or jobs you're qualified for. So what I'm going to do is just put in hotel management. So if you were a hospitality person, if you were in this sort of field where you were looking at working in a hotel, whatever it is, hotel management would be one search term that you could use. You could also search by hospitality. You could search, I don't know, you would have to figure out what sorts of keywords you would be looking for within your particular job field. Then you want to select a location. Unless you're particularly tied to an area, I would choose the largest geographic area you're willing to move to, just to give you the maximum number of results that you can potentially look through. Because it's easier to pare down a job search if you've got more results than you want than it is to sort of scale up if you don't have enough results. So you click Find Jobs, fairly straightforward, and it's going to give you, no, I don't. You can do this if you want to. Put in your email address and let them send you new updates. I'm not going to do that because I don't actually want a hotel management job. But once you get in here, I mean, we've got 2,806 jobs, so that's a pretty decent number to choose from. So what you may want to do is use some of these filters, and these are going to be really good tools. So salary estimate, job type, location, company, experience level. Some of these things are probably going to be more important than others. Like, unless you've really got a particular company in mind, you probably want to just leave that one. But things like full-time versus part-time, temporary, internship, contract, or commission work, that may be really important to you. Like, if you're only looking for a full-time job, you want to select that because that's going to skim out everything that's not full-time. Location again, this is something that may or may not be that important to you. It depends on how willing you are to relocate. But the next thing that I would say in terms of working through which filters are most important is probably the experience level. Because if you're a new university graduate or something like this, you probably aren't going to be competitive for mid-level or senior positions. So you're probably looking for entry level. Officially, entry level means someone who's just starting out, but one of the things that you will probably see is that even the things that are calling themselves entry level positions nowadays often require 1 to 5 years of experience, which ironically enough by definition is not an entry level position, but they call them that because they're the sort of low level positions. You may go based on salary, but if that's your if that's one of your primary considerations, but I would be cautious about I would be cautious about filtering too early based on salary estimates, because you want to be looking at a wide range of jobs to potentially be competitive for them. So once you've found a job that you think is potentially going to be a good fit, and you want to be looking primarily at a couple of things here, because you can skim down and you can see a lot of different types of jobs here. So the main thing that you want to be looking at is the description of the job itself. You want to be looking at the name of the business, maybe where the business is, again, if that's something that's important to you. Requirements, if they have them listed, is actually a good thing to look at, because that's going to give you a sense of whether or not you're likely to be qualified without even clicking on the job ad itself. So, like for this general manager in Mechanicsburg, they require 1 year of experience as a hotel general manager. If you don't have that, chances are you're not going to be that competitive. So you may need to look for other jobs that don't have that. But when you actually look at the job call itself, you will see, I'm going to scroll down on this one until I find it, you will see a set of essential requirements on most jobs. And so you want to make sure that you check off all of those essential requirements primarily, if not most of them. In another video, we're going to talk about how to critically read job ads, but some of the things that you want to be looking at when you're looking at an ad on a site like Indeed or Monster, the position overview, you're going to want to read very carefully, because that's going to give you a good sense of exactly what it is that they're looking for. So that's going to give you one of your best resources in terms of figuring out whether or not you're going to be a good fit for this. The essential job functions, or something like this. There will almost always be a job functions or a minimum job description or something like this. We'll talk more about this in a video on critically reading job ads, but as you go through the essential job functions, you do want to read them all, but some of these are going to be more important than others. So when you're preparing your job materials for this position, you want to try and figure out what are the most important things. So, like for instance, if they something like participate in interviewing and hiring employees, handling payroll processes and approvals, those are probably going to be more important than something like maintains supplies and keeps areas of responsibility fully stocked. Like, that's going to be important as well, but that's probably not something that you would need to talk about in, say, an application letter for this job. So you want to again assess what are the things that that are really important to them, and then what's not. And then typically down toward the bottom, they have some more concrete information about the job itself. So this is full-time, which is great because that's what we sort of filtered for. It does require 2 years of hotel management, so if you don't have that, this may not be the right job for you. Work location, benefits, this is a good thing to know about. Schedule, a good thing to know about, etc., etc. So these are things that you want to be aware of when you're looking at these job ads and trying to figure out if this would be a good fit for you. There's also this upload your resume option, which I'm not going to do because I don't actually want a job through Indeed, but this is not a bad step. I'm not actually doing this, but this is not actually a bad step because it can help Indeed or Monster or whichever site you're working with identify jobs that they think would be a good fit for you. So if you don't want to keep coming back to these websites and doing these searches over and over and over again and trying to do this all by hand, that can be a good option. You can also create an account through Indeed, which I believe will let you like save jobs and things like that, so that you can come back and re-look at job calls. You can save bunches of them and keep track of everything very easily through the site. So that's not a bad thing to do if you're on the job market. I'm going to turn now to Monster because we have a fairly similar kind of thing. So again, I'm going to put in hotel management through Pennsylvania. Same kind of thing, slightly different setup. Again, we've got the list of jobs, slightly less information initially about them than you get with Indeed, so that's not quite as good. But again, you've got some of these filtering options, so you can set the location, company. Again, I would encourage you, if you're looking for a full-time job, to set that filter and let that go for you. So that actually hasn't changed much in terms of the number of jobs that could be the right fit. One of the things you do want to be aware of is this count of how recently stuff was posted. So again, you've got a lot of information here through the website. There are different sort of schools of thought in terms of this. Sometimes if a job has been posted for a good long time, like more than 30 days, 24 days, something like that, that sometimes means that they haven't yet found the right person, and depending on how desperate they are to hire someone, they may be more flexible about hiring if you can make a good case for yourself. On the other hand, if it's something like 2 days ago, posted today, 1 day ago, if it's been up for a fairly short amount of time, you actually may benefit from applying for those jobs because they won't have seen 200 other applicants already. They'll have seen a handful of other applicants who have already gotten in on this. And so the fact that you will be in there fairly early may mean that you're more likely to be considered because they haven't seen a bunch of other options. So that's something to be aware of. And different companies have different hiring practices, so it's hard to tell whether they're going to be more flexible or not early in the process or after the ad's been up for a while or things like that. But again, you want to be looking, I think, as broadly as you can in the early phases of your job search, and then narrow things down as you develop a list of jobs that you think would be a good fit for you. And as always, you want to shape your job materials for that particular job. So you want to make sure that your resume, your application letter are all tailored for this particular job, because that's really going to help you catch their attention. And again, I've got other videos that are going to talk you through those techniques for tailoring a resume, tailoring a job application letter. So those are some of my sort of basic suggestions about how to find jobs. So hopefully this helps. Hopefully you're able to use these tools to your advantage. Thanks.